Hello, and welcome once again to it is the ninth episode of the Grow with Grevera podcast. And I'm, of course, Thomas Bell, CEO of Grevera. And I'm joined, as always, by my co founder and CTO, Alex Houchins.
Hey, we're back, everyone.
And we have now on the podcast also today, we have a guest. We've been having a lot of guests lately, and we're excited to have this one. Matt Hoffman, who's a co founder of R Cannabis, which is a nonprofit organization designed to help people get access to the cannabis labor force. So basically, if you're interested in working in cannabis, particularly in Michigan, but I'll let Matt introduce himself and kind of give a quick rundown of R Cannabis, and we'll be talking a lot about the Michigan market and kind of what R Cannabis does as the program unfolds. But go ahead and introduce yourself, Matt.
Yeah, hi. Well, thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it. And it's nice to be a guest on a podcast rather than a host. So thanks for letting me switch seats. As you mentioned, my name is Matt Hoffman. I'm a co founder of the nonprofit R Cannabis, as you can see here. And basically, what we do is we provide job readiness services to all the cannabis job seekers. And what we've seen is everyone needs help making a resume, everyone needs help prepping for an interview. And we get every color, walk, talk, creed, education level, background, experience level. We've got PhDs that we're working with, and we've got interns. So everybody needs help developing these soft skills. That way you can put your best foot forward and land your dream job in the cannabis field.
Yeah, and one of the things I find interesting about R Cannabis, one of the many things, is that you decided to become a nonprofit rather than a for-profit. And I'm curious when there's a lot of obviously in the industry, we're a for-profit business ourselves. A lot of people getting into that space, and you could have easily gone in that direction. I'm curious to get your perspective on why you kind of wanted to do this as a nonprofit organization.
Yeah. Yeah. You mean, why am I not making billions of dollars like everybody else?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Uh, you know, it, we were affected by the war on drugs. And I have seen firsthand, and my family has experienced firsthand, how tough it is to get back on one's feet. And we found ourselves in a unique position with our cannabis experience and our workforce development background where we were being inundated by job seekers asking for the services that we're providing. And we realized that most people don't have $1,500 to pay for a professional resume. And most
Mhm.
people don't know that you could hire an interview coach and pay them several $100s an hour. It's critical services that help people that are either financially unattainable or that are just simply not there. And so we made a conscientious choice to put our impact over our profit and to put our money where our mouth was. And we were more concerned about doing good than adding commas and zeros to our bank account. It was it was a very easy decision for us, and I have to say that it's the best one that I've made because this is the most satisfying work that I have ever done in my career. I absolutely love what I do. It's very challenging, it's very fun, it's very dynamic, and I encourage others to get involved and contribute through charity or use your philanthropy for good. It will make you feel so amazing. So that's how
Yeah.
that's the
What's
yeah.
the backstory there? I'm really curious, like, and to find yourself, because this is definitely something very niche. Like, how did you find yourself deciding this is it? This is the direction I'm going to take my life in.
Well, where do you want to start? So, at the beginning, or do you want to start with the workforce development stuff?
Hey, wherever you want to start. Yeah.
Okay. So,
Exiting the womb, whatever works.
okay, we'll do a very, very quick life story, really quick. So, it was in 2008 when I had gotten back from traveling the world. I had dropped out of university. I had no idea what I wanted to do except for travel. And so I went and spent about a year traveling the world. I came back and I was broke. So I moved in with my mom, as every world traveler does. And I had heard a rumor about someone who was making over $100,000 a year growing cannabis. And I was pretty arrogant at the time. And I thought, well, I could do that. And so I convinced my family to cash in their 401k. and to begin growing weed in our basement. And we were terrible. We were so bad at it that I had to go get second and third jobs, and we struggled for a couple years and just stuck to it, and eventually ended up winning back to back to back caregiver cups in the state of Michigan, which are like little state championships. And we started our own dispensary. We started our own grow, and we turned our measly $37,000 investment into a multi-million dollar business in the short span of about 6 years. And so with that came all of the attention from the Met, which is the marijuana eradication team, and some of the other specialized police forces that hunted cannabis businesses at the time. Now, this is a totally different world, and it wasn't that long ago. And so we got caught up in that and had our stuff taken, and I got thrown in jail for a while. And when I came out, I had nothing, literally nothing. I mean, we had our house, thankfully, but I didn't have anything else. And I thought, well, what am I going to do? You know, I'm totally screwed here. But I know what I know, and I know how to take a very little amount of money and turn it into a multi-million dollar cannabis business, which most people didn't know how to do at the time and still don't. And I thought, okay, maybe we could get a license. But the way the licenses were being granted at the time was very prohibitive. And it was clear to me right off the bat that I wouldn't be able to get a license. And so what I had spent my entire professional life learning how to master, I was now being excluded from doing. And so I thought, okay, what can I do? I know what I can't do, but there's a whole world of possibilities of things that I can do. Well, my mom has worked at nonprofits. She's worked with refugees. She's worked helping mentally and physically disabled people get jobs. She has her teaching certificate and a master's degree in human resources and education workforce development from Western Michigan. And she's worked in career placement. She's worked at Michigan Works. The long and the short is that she is the backbone of what has now become R Cannabis. So she knew workforce development, how to get a diverse range of people with diverse backgrounds and educational levels and capability levels, jobs, really rubber meeting the road, practical stuff. And so we were looking. We said, well, we really have a handle on building and growing cannabis businesses, and we have your workforce development stuff. Let's do something with that. And we formed handgrown.jobs, which was like the Indeed of weed. And that was incredibly successful. And that's where the need for the nonprofit had sprung from. And we had found very quickly that there were thousands of people that were driven and passionate and enthusiastic about getting to work in cannabis that just couldn't bridge the chasm between their enthusiasm and actually getting the job. And so we looked around and said, well, you know, there's got to be government agencies, there's got to be people that can help. And there weren't. The federal government's position on cannabis prohibits state-funded state agencies that receive federal dollars from helping cannabis job seekers. And the hypocrisy in that is astounding. But we're not going to get into that. The practical side is that people needed help getting jobs and there was none available. And so with the overwhelming demand, I mean, my email was inundated. If you would email me during that time period, I would have never seen your email to be on your podcast today, because it would have been buried with people asking for help. And so we knew that we were the right people at the right place at the right time to help. And so we just took action, and here we are.
Yeah, and this is fascinating because you mentioned like the regulations around the state agencies being able to help, but you also mentioned just having this inundation of people that wanted to get in, didn't know how to get in. Of course, there's these kind of services that are offered in other markets outside of cannabis, but I'm curious, what is it you think is like unique about the cannabis industry versus other professional industries or nonprofits, aside from the governmental regulation? But are there any other unique qualities in terms of job seekers that sort of made your program, R Cannabis, particularly useful that doesn't really extend into other markets? Is there anything about this market in Michigan or more broadly for like the people that are getting into like the labor part, not necessarily owning cannabis grows, but just working in as a career, What is different about this industry that you found, if anything?
Yeah, so we we're actually the first and only organization of our kind in the world. And very, very quickly, we expanded and have a national footprint. So we service people all across the nation, and we've actually helped people in Europe and we've helped people in Australia. So we're ever expanding. And what I find is unique about the cannabis space is that there's unbridled opportunity. I mean, think about it. You don't need experience, you don't need a degree to get into an industry that has unprecedented upward mobility. It's a place where someone can get in with enthusiasm and a willingness to learn, and in a very short period of time. And I've seen this time and time again with our cannabis alumni, people who complete the courses and are now working in the cannabis field, where
Mhm.
in a year they'll be promoted 2 or 3 times. They'll make $20,000 to $30,000 a year more, and they're just continuing to climb up the ladder. And so the uniqueness about the cannabis industry is that it doesn't have all these prerequisites. It's not like the .com bubble where you had to be in Silicon Valley and you had to have money and be in the know. No, the cannabis industry is you have to be willing to get in. And where we find the bottleneck is in those entry points. At, where the industry is the same as all the other traditional industries is that you have to have a resume and you have to have an interview. And the days of, hey, this is my cousin, hire him. Hey, this is my best friend, hire him. Hey, this is my mom, hire him. That only builds a team so far. And so the differences are the opportunities for job seekers and career development. And the same is you have to have a resume and you have to have you have to have a successful interview.
And with, like, it seems like our cannabis is really offering a lot of like professional coaching and placement to really get into the industry, to give you that ramp to grow your career. I'm kind of curious though. I know you would. I don't want to steer the conversation too far in this direction, but I am curious. You'd mentioned some cultivation challenges you had faced earlier on, and of course, I'm always very interested
Mm.
in like from the grower side. Do your courses ever touch on like industry specific knowledge or intellectual capital as it relates to cultivation itself, or what kind of placement or focus do you try to steer people in?
Yep. So that's a question I get all the time from employers and from job seekers. So yes. All
Oh,
right.
interesting.
So
Okay.
we have we have stacks of curriculum. Workforce development is what my mom's thing is. So we've got stacks, and I mean, stacks of curriculum. And the truth is that there are other people that do that. Now, whether they do it better than us or worse than us, I don't know. And frankly, I don't care. What I do know is that nobody does what we do. So we are very vigilant and we are hyper focused on job readiness programs. The training, the different plant manipulation techniques, the different growing methods, customer service when it comes to working in a retail center, all of that comes after. And so someone can have and we've seen this. Actually, I've seen this. I've got a lady in one of our cohorts right now. She's got more certificates than this pad of paper has pages, but she cannot get a job because her resume is how do I say this politely? It wouldn't get her hired. And she when she talks, she is so detail oriented that when I ask her a question, I get a ton of details, and I can't get through interviews with her because we spend 8-9 minutes on one question. And so she doesn't present she doesn't know how to present herself in a format to where someone goes, hey, you know what, I see that you have potential here, and I want to bring you in for a second interview. I want to hire you. And so while the training and the certificates and the knowledge is very important, it's crucial, we're focused on our lane, which no one else is doing, and that is preparing people to get those jobs. Now,
Yeah, and go ahead.
that said, as the organization matures and develops in a couple years, yeah, of course, that's why we develop those curriculums. But we have to be mindful of our bandwidth and where we can have the maximum impact today.
Yeah, so when we're thinking about that's so it's very similar in form, but a lot of eccentricities that are kind of unique to the cannabis industry. One of those eccentricities seems, and we've touched on it a little bit, is that even in states where cannabis is legal, it seems like there's, or maybe there is, or maybe there isn't. It seems like there likely would be still a stigma associated with working in the industry. Is that something that you've encountered or seen in job seekers who are maybe like interested but reluctant because like, what will my mom think? Kind of uh, perspective. What are you seeing things like that when you're talking to clients and even employers?
Every day, every day, the stigma is very real. And I'm in cannabis. I've been in cannabis for over 11 years. You guys are in cannabis. All the people I know are in cannabis, and so it's very easy to be in a bubble where everyone in the world is in and comfortable with cannabis, and they're passionate for it. When in reality, we're just in our own bubbles, and it can become a bit of an echo chamber. The stigma is very real, and we have seen, especially during the pandemic, where the states had designated their cannabis programs as essential. We had seen that bonify and create, either out of necessity or out of an opportunity, making working in cannabis overnight a much more credible and viable career pathway. The but we get I probably get a dozen or more of these emails a week of people that will say, am I going to be arrested? Will I have a
Mm-hmm.
W-2? Will I have insurance? What is the jeopardy of working in this industry? Those are common questions. And that's why I created my podcast, was just to try to, you know, not have to answer every one of those questions same and time again. But it is very, very present, is very real. But as we move forward and states are starting to see the positive cascade that comes from the programs, then people will become more comfortable. But
Mm-hmm.
it's today and for the foreseeable future, the stigma is real.
And so I'm curious, at risk of asking the question that you've answered a dozen times, I'm curious about the W-2. What is the answer to that question? If you're working directly with the plant, do people get W-2s? Can they file taxes without a problem? Or
Yeah, of course.
yeah,
Yes, of course. Yes,
okay,
unless you're a contract worker and then you're 1099, or if you're consulting or something, it's a W-9. I mean, that's but yes, you get a W-2, you get
gotcha.
insurance. Yes, absolutely.
And I guess there's still a lot of cash getting paid out, like for payroll, et cetera. Is that true, or is it mostly matured in Michigan and other places where you're actually getting paid like through direct deposit and that kind of thing?
Most have direct deposit. It's been a while since I've heard of people being cashed out. Aside from tips or something like that. At the end of a shift or something, the same as you'd have for a bartender or something like that. But or maybe tips for trim teams or something like that. But
Mm-hmm.
traditionally, your wages are paid through some sort of declarative statement that can be reported to the IRS. So yeah, everything is on the up and up.
Very cool. And when we're thinking about, I saw a report actually in doing the preparation for this conversation that in Michigan in 2020 the number of jobs have doubled. That was the report. And I'm curious, two things. One is, do you think they've really doubled, or they're just coming out of the shadows? And if they have doubled, like what do you think what is the impact of that on the market? Because that's a huge amount of growth if it's true. What are you seeing in the marketplace? Is it really a doubling, or is it just we're seeing more people that were already in the industry but now are public? What is your perspective there in Michigan in
Yeah.
particular?
Yeah. So as far as the job growth numbers, yes. And the pandemic had something to do with it, but the timing of the businesses had a little bit more to do with it. And we're at the point in time where the larger scale operators and the mid-tier operators in the state have had their first shops open, have gone through their building phase, and they're starting to expand. And that's really what's driving the job growth. Is we've had one store, okay, now we're opening 3 more in the next 6 months, and okay, we've got to staff up. And then we've got to bring in more of the traditional business roles. And that's really what the trend is right now, is that we're starting to see specialisms, people within middle management that have a very specialized skill set that can come in and help support these businesses as they're going through these very aggressive growth patterns. And so it's not just entry level positions, bud tenders or people helping in the garden, grow technicians. It's people that have degrees, that have a couple years of experience, that can come in and provide a very specific value to the employers. I would say that the
So we're talking
numbers are
operations
accurate.
heavy or oh, sorry. I was just going to ask, are those middle
Yeah.
management roles, those specialized roles, are they operations heavy? Middle management, like how would you describe those roles, or which roles are growing the most?
Right now, and it's sort of like the tide. Everything goes in and out and it changes throughout the year. Right now, what I'm seeing is it is more on the corporate or middle management business support side, having people that can do compliance. That's a hiring boom right now, and it's like the worst, best kept secret in cannabis. If you have a background in compliance, then you could probably walk in and get a job tomorrow in cannabis because it's so necessary. HR, HR is a no brainer. Everybody needs HR, but we're seeing people that are coming in that retail retail development officers or VP of business development, people that can implement tactics in the overarching strategy of the business and help support that business and support the people that are coming in and running the operations. Operations, there's always a demand for skilled labor, guys that have experience in cultivation that can oversee 500, 1,000, 20,000 plants. That's always going to be in high demand because it's such a rarefied skill set. The truth is that when they need to bring on a team of grower associates or whatever they're calling, whatever each company is, every company calls each job title something different. But anyway, those people are pretty easy to come by because what the industry has done is they're starting to standardize their practices, and they're making compartmentalization to where we would bring someone who doesn't necessarily have a lot of plant touching or operational experience onto the team, and then we'd have a more experienced team member work with them and teach them and train them almost in a in-house informal apprenticeship way. And so what I'm seeing is it's the traditional business support structures that frankly without them the businesses become very sloppy and disorganized because they're going through such an aggressive growth pattern. There's so many things happening and it's happening so quickly, and without having those supporting roles, the wheels start to come off and you start to see the culture start to break down, and uh,
Mm-hmm.
the attrition rate will go up. People will leave because once you're working in cannabis, the world becomes your oyster. You could leave one company and go to another one very easily, and the the it 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 sets a negative cascade. We'll just put it that way. Without and having people that are wearing too many hats, doing things that are way outside of their capacity as far as their work capacity and also their skill and ability capacity, people just get tired and frustrated. And so bringing those specialized corporate positions in makes everybody's life so much easier.
I was really curious about that because if you have aggressive growth, because we're seeing this as each state comes online, at least in the US, you get a ton of supply side, you get a ton of producers that enter the market, and then you do have a bit of a correction or consolidation, as margins will shrink at least in the short term, and then you get uh, that sort of that more level playing field. But I'm really curious. You have insight directly into the labor side of things and the needs of cultivators in general, or even needs of retail or wholesalers. I'm just kind of curious, like you're just touching on some of the challenges there. I didn't know what what are those major challenges that you're seeing, and like what should we look out for as we go forward in the industry?
Major talent is the major challenge is talent first and foremost, and to find somebody who has years of experience that is capable in a position that is available and willing to come on board a cannabis business, that's the biggest challenge. You know, when we think about cannabis, we'll think about it's a tall ship, you know, like a pirate ship or early days Columbus ships. And I think sometimes people think that when they're onboarding onto these cannabis businesses, they're the ships in the harbors and it's a sunny day and it's calm and placid and everybody gets on and it's great. That's not the case. When you get on board a cannabis business, a cannabis ship, you are getting on a ship that is tossed in the seas. It's in a squall. Whether things are going well or not, it doesn't matter. The the speed, the volatility, the 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 quick reactions, the nimbleness that's required to participate in the cultures of these businesses is you have to have your sea legs about you very quickly. And so finding people, the talent that are willing and able and can operate on those decks, that's the biggest challenge. And the way that those people are attracted is it's not necessarily money. Money is money is not really the issue. It's more the culture. What is it that what is it that the company is doing? What is their purpose beyond profit? What is their culture? What is their structures? Are people being listened to? Are they being respected? Are their are their insights and their expertise being put to good use, or is it just shut up and go over here and I'm the daddy, we're going to do what I say? And so those are the key factors that I think hiring managers need to look for going forward. And the truth is they know that. Now whether or not they can implement that or not at that company is it depends on individual companies and their cultures and their attitudes of leadership. So getting those specialisms is the biggest challenge.
Yeah, and so what we're talking about basically is when you talk about all those standards, you talk about creating uh, n- the same names for the same job roles across the industry. That standardization. It's all about that professionalization of the industry that we hear people talk about. One of the questions I have, particularly in Michigan, but I know some states have different licensing requirements for working in cannabis. What are there licensing requirements just for myself and the audience that may or may not know in Michigan? Like if you just want to be a hand trimmer or you want to work on cultivating the plant, do you have to go get a license from the state to do that? And if so, like how much does that impact people's willingness or interest in actually getting in the industry, if at all?
Mm. No, not in Michigan. Currently, there is no requirement other than a background check to work in cannabis. In other
Gotcha.
states like Colorado, you have to go get your card. In Utah, you have to get a certain number of hours of training. There are talks in Michigan of having some sort of a training or some sort of a certificate. That was something that I lobbied for in the very early days, but nobody was listening to the nuances of that argument at the time. So to answer your question, currently in Michigan, there is no entry requirement other than a background check.
And on the background check, I'm curious that I assume it means if you've been convicted of any cannabis related crime, you can't participate in it, or how does that
No,
work?
they've changed it and they relaxed it and they're incentivizing hiring. They're calling it social equity hires. They're incentivizing hiring people who have been adversely affected by cannabis conviction, which is which is what it should be. And I the question I get is should I've been in trouble for weed. Should I put that on my resume? And I say, yeah, that right there is certified experience. Absolutely. But that's a very vulnerable and unorthodox thing to do. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, the industry is pushing, and the state is pushing to hire people um, that have been, you know, adversely affected by the war on drugs, as they should.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. So when we think about all the challenges that are in the industry as it relates to regulation, as it relates to how states are creating their compliance regimes, all these things that are coming up in the world on the labor side and even the production side, if we were to put you in charge for some period of time in Michigan, and we say, okay, Matt, you got 6 months. We need you to fix everything that you think is wrong with the industry right now, and on the labor side or anything you can think of. What would be your ideal world? What would that look like? And are there any states that you're aware of in the country that are doing it better than others?
Oh yeah, of course there are states that are doing it better than others, but I'm king for the day. I like this. All right, so king for the day, I would do two things immediately. One is I would earmark funds for grants or for funding for programs like R Cannabis. You know, we are funded solely on the generosity and the giving and philanthropy of our corporate partners and of individuals and families. We are essentially fulfilling a role that the state should be filling, but we're funded privately, you know, through charity. And we would need, and I would like to see a fund for programs like ours. So that I would do that first thing. The next thing I would do is I would address the siloing of the micro licenses in Michigan. In my view, and a lot of other professional views, is that it's a trap. And there's been a big push right now to get people to get micro licenses as a way to get participation from minority communities. But the problem is that if, let's say, I have a micro license in Michigan and you have a micro license in Michigan, and you're allowed to grow, and you're allowed to make your own special brownies, let's say, and you're allowed to retail them. That's awesome. You're a little vertical business. But you can only grow, I think it's 100 up to 150 plants. So that's not a lot of plants. And the real issue is that, let's say we're neighbors, you know, a couple miles down the road from each other, and you sell all your flour, you sell all your special brownies. You're prohibited from calling me up and saying, "Hey Matt, can I buy some bud from you so I can sell it?" State's like, "Nope, can't do that. You are in a silo. You can only sell what you grow. No, you can't get anything from anybody else." So it's very restrictive. And so what that does is that puts these businesses that enjoy discounted licensing from the state, but don't enjoy any discounts for the physical infrastructure or any of their associated business costs. So these are $500,000 operations, and it puts them where they also don't enjoy any of the volume purchasing because it's only 150 plants. Well, how much nutrients can you buy for 150 plants? How much soil is there for 150 plants? It's not a lot. So they have that further disadvantage facing them. And then not being able to do business to business transactions, it's the final nail in the coffin. It's an absolute trap. People that don't have the money to lose are mortgaging their house and their cousin's house, and they're going all in on these businesses, and the deck is so stacked against them that they don't even know it. And I don't know if the people that are advising them are making them aware of the serious peril and jeopardy that they're facing. Now, the legislature could change this, or the MRA could change this, but there's no guarantee on that either. So it's a tremendously large and risky proposition. So king for the day, that I would unsilo those micro businesses and give them a viable chance. I would also add a fund for an incubator for businesses to come and to bring subject matter experts or business leaders to come in and provide tutelage and mentorship um, to these new business owners, because cannabis is a couple of things. As I mentioned, it's very expensive and it's very volatile, and it's brutally unforgiving because, again, operating in cannabis, because of 280E, there's no tax write-offs for business expenses either. So you're walking a very, very narrow ice covered cliff on Everest without ropes or oxygen. It's very perilous.
Yeah, what
Those are the things that I would change if I was king for the day.
Yeah, that's actually a really good list. I couldn't agree more. The especially like the restrictions on number of plants for the micro licenses. If people are going all in on those micro license businesses, that's a really big gamble, I would say, especially as we see all of these extra producers enter the market. Yeah, that's probably something that I would love if people could take another look at.
Well, and on that note, what we're seeing right now in the regulated market is, if we look at the numbers of municipalities that have opted into recreational or into a medical program, there's a bottleneck. And so we're seeing a supply glut where independent growers underneath the state medical program are we're starting to see that race to the bottom at wholesale prices, because there's not enough retail spaces around the state for there to be the supply evenly distributed. And so we're seeing wholesale pounds of $1,100, $1,200, sometimes 2,000. Most growers are happy with 1,800 a pound. That's going to continue to fall as the market matures. And the vertical operators, of course, if I'm a vertical operator, I'm going to grow as much of my supply as I can, because my cost of goods is way cheaper and I have more
Right.
control. And so if people wanted into Michigan cannabis as a business, they should have already been in. And if they're not in, then they better come strapped up and ready to play. And the days of stupid money, one, there should have never been those days, but the days of stupid money are well over. And that you've with cannabis, you've got to have people that can do the actual work. There's some people that over on the eastern side of the state, they just happen to have some property in a green zone, which means they were zoned. They basically had a gold mine created, and they said, "Well, heck, we've got this property. Let's grow weed." And they're real estate developers. They don't know anything about growing weed. They've been in operation for a year, and they've yet to pass a test. They're going under because they don't know how to they don't have anyone to crew their ship, and they frankly they seem like they're kind of terrible people and nobody wants to work with them or help them. So we're starting to see the cannibalization of the market here as well.
And specifically as it relates to talent shortage, like people who have enough experience to help any new firm, no matter the size, get on their feet. These people are in short supply. It sounds like, at least from a consulting perspective, or even just reliable labor in general, which our cannabis can help with. I mean, that you seem to be filling a critical need, right? And even as, regardless of what happens with number of suppliers per state, our cannabis can step in to help with that talent shortage, at least, I imagine.
Well, yeah, of course we can do that. I mean, that's bread and butter. That's what we do. You touch on something in that what's happened is there are talented people that can do operations, be it extraction, be it leading a garden, setting up a garden. The talent is there. It's finite, but it's there. The issue is that we had Dwayne, and I've told the story many times. I'm going to go do a follow up with him next week. This is a guy who is a master grower, and it shows because he's at the helm of a Class A facility, which is 500 plants, and they're adding another 1,500. And they're crushing it. but he couldn't get an entry-level position. He couldn't even get an interview for an entry-level position for a year because his resume was 7 pages, single-spaced, 12-point font. And hiring managers would look at it and they'd go, oh my God, I'm putting this in file 13, which is the garbage, and I'm moving on. So it's really a communication and it's a translation issue. It's we can recognize the same as a chef in a kitchen, the same as a mechanic in a shop. We can recognize talent because that's what we've done our professional lives. And so when we come across a grower, I say, well, you're not getting a job because your resume sucks. That's why. So when we changed Dwayne's resume, he put it out there, and within 3 days, he had 3 competing job offers. And we've seen that time and time again with our alumni that come through the classes. The moment they take one of our resumes and put it on the market, they're like the prettiest girl going to prom. They are inundated with people that want to interview them and hire them because it's readily available to hiring managers, the superior ability and skill sets that these people have. And that's the biggest challenge, is making the community aware that it's not you, it's how you're coming across on paper that's preventing you from getting a job. It's not that people take it very personally that they're rejected, and it hurts and it sucks, but it has no reflection of them as a person or their abilities. It has to do with, does this piece of paper convey to someone who may not know anything about growing cannabis or anything about operations, does this convey the checklist of information that they have to where they can go, oh yes, this person can fulfill this requirement. I'm curious about this person. Let me call them for an interview. So it's as you mentioned, it's critical work and it's necessary, and it's everybody. I mean, it's not just people that are low educated or poor. It's everybody. I've got 3 PhDs right now. One is a published economist. He's written like 6 books. His resume is it's it's like reading a dictionary. And as smart as he is, he's having trouble finding the work that he wants because a phone book would read more uh, a phone book would be more of an interesting read than his resume. And so people have to figure out that it's about conveying themselves concisely, showing their value and showing the opportunities and the problems that they can solve at a company. And that's how we spend our time, and that's what we do.
Yeah. And if somebody wants to get started doing that, if they're not sure how to get into the industry or they need some help, what do they do? And in terms of interacting with you and your organization, what do they do? And then what can they expect? Like, what is the process? What does that look like?
Yeah. So rcannabis.org, rcannabis.org is our website. You can go and you can sign up to take a class. They fill up quickly. Every time we open a section, it fills up, and then we open more seats and they fill up, and then the wait list fills up. So we're flooded. I mean, we're just overwhelmed with people that need help getting in. So that is a way, and we're adding capacity and we're fundraising to build our offices up. It's sort of like we're Best Buy on a Black Friday and we have 4 cashiers. So we're adding more cashiers so we can get more people through the process. If that doesn't work, then there are times where we can work with people one-on-one, and you can reach out to us at contact@rcannabis.org. It's contact@ourcannabis.org, and reach out to us. And if it makes sense to work one-on-one, we'll work one-on-one with people. But again, capacity is limited, time is limited, and the demand is overwhelming. So those are the 2 ways that you can reach out. And then, of course, Matt Hoffman on LinkedIn. I'm constantly on LinkedIn. And then the second part of your question, remind me of that, would you?
What can they expect if they go to one of your classes? What does that look like? What can they expect?
When you get into one of these classes, be prepared to put in some effort. You're going to spend over 20 hours of in-class time. And these are all of this, everything we do is no cost to the job seekers, all no cost. And so when you get into the class, be prepared to spend over 20 hours in class working with us and our instructors. The first half of the class, you're going to make a resume. The back half of the class, you're going to learn, interview. We're just going to drill and do practice interview questions. I've got a list of about 100 interview questions, and I'll say, tell me about a time you resolved a conflict at work, or tell me your biggest strengths and weaknesses, and why do you want this job? And some of those answers, some of those questions seem like they're softballs, but people fumble them all the time. And so we teach people how to concisely convey an answer and then get ready to answer the next question, and put their best foot forward so they can continue the interview process and ultimately get a job. I will tell you that it's effort based. The people that put in the effort, they are already working. I mean, we had 3 people hired out of the class already. The class isn't even, it's 3/4 of the way done, and we've already had 3 people that have left the class because they've already got jobs. So that's fantastic. But if you come to the class and you put the effort in, you will work in cannabis, period. But that's the result. So as the class wraps up, we go through negotiation, tips and tricks and tactics, and then you're free, little bird, to go out in the world. We will connect you to employers that are our corporate partners and preferred employers, people that we know that have good culture and that are hiring. And then also, if there's a company, there's a alumni right now, Will, he's over on the Eastern Seaboard. He said, "Hey Matt, I want to work at this company because they're really close. It'd be a short commute." And so I just pick up the phone and I just call them. I will open doors for people and try to make connections for them. There's nothing that's within or outside the bounds of our power that we won't do to help the people that are helping themselves. Because the time commitment that these people are putting in, I mean, it's one guy, Will, he's in a master's program and he's putting in 20 hours of his time outside of class. Like, that tells me everything that I need to know about him. Everything, just because of the effort that he's putting in. And so
right.
we will do everything beyond our power to help them. And then as people go through their careers, we'll stay in touch. And then we had a young lady, an alumni, that life took her from the east side of the state to the west side. And so we made connections for her, and now she's working over here on the west side near us. And so we support
Very
people
cool.
through their careers.
And so I know you got a hard stop, so I want to be respectful of your time. Just one more final question: Is are the classes only in Michigan, or can you do it outside of Michigan, or is that only Michigan right now?
No, I've got people from New York. I got people from Brooklyn, Manhattan, Jersey, West Virginia, DC, California, Colorado, Florida. We had a guy from Germany. We had a guy from Australia. You know, because we're virtual, we can be anywhere. I just put the names
Yep.
of this. I put the names of different cities because it helps us keep track of things. But no, we've got, in our Detroit cohort, we've got 3 people from Chicago. They're
Okay.
not in
Very
Detroit.
cool.
So yeah, we're
So,
national.
very cool. Well, thank you so much for taking the time today. I know you got a hard stop. One quick plug for us. This is the Grow with Grevera podcast. Our company is Grevera. We have a product that's specifically designed for cannabis growers. If you're interested, it's grevera.com. Our product's called Harvest Cloud, and we'd love to give you a demo and set up some time to talk about our product if anybody out there is listening is interested. And we'll link to all of your stuff in the show notes. It's contact at rcannabis.org, best way to get in touch with you. And rcannabis.org .org is your website. So thanks again so much for your time, Matt. It's been great to talk with you. I have so many more questions, but we'll have to save them for another time, I guess.
I know. Yeah. Well, I mean, thanks for having me. And again, it's nice to be on this side of the mic. So thank you, Thomas. Thank you, Alex. Nice to meet you. And look forward to having many more conversations. If there's anything you can do to help you guys, don't hesitate to reach out.